Hi, this is Ed Cohen in San Diego, California, and this is Global TV, a talk show, not a webinar. Yes, you have to talk if you come on this show, so get ready and look good. Okay, so let's welcome Yvonne Quahe, who's with the World Bank Group Family Network in Washington, D.C. She's an expert in change management and is a program advisor. Also on this segment of the program is Stephen Howard, who's based in Southern California in Palm Springs, spends a lot of time in Mexico. He runs an educational, I guess, a consulting division called Caliente Leadership. And Stephen, you're the author of many bestsellers having to do with leadership, but I've asked you to get your book and hold it up. So Stephen Howard, this is his new book. And what does that say?
It's how stress and anxiety impacts your decision making, and which is very timely for today's world, because I don't know anybody who's not going through stress and anxiety right now.
Yeah, and those wires there, are those tentacles or what?
It just kind of shows how if you get really close up, you see the flames, kind of like the California fires right now. So how the brain gets overloaded with all these things, and it's really the lines are coming from the word stress and anxiety, and it impacts your brain, and then it's going to impact how you make decisions.
So I've asked Stephen to contribute to the conversation. He's got a unique perspective, which he'll get into. But your prior book is also a bestseller. And that's about CEOs who make lousy decisions because of stress.
Yeah, it's called Better Decisions, Better Thinking, and Better Outcomes. And people say, why is it that order? Shouldn't it be better thinking first, and then you get better decisions? And the whole premise of the book is that the first decision you have to make is not get emotionally hijacked, to take a purposeful pause, and then from there, get yourself under control and use the rational part of your brain rather than the emotional part of your brain, so that you start to respond to situations, people, and events rather than react to them. So that's the premise of that book.
Okay, and quickly, Sundae, that's a wonderful name, as I mentioned earlier. So you're living in Switzerland and bound for South Africa in a few days. So exactly. So are you going to have repatriation blues or what?
Well, we're in assignment abroad in South Africa. You can hear from my accent, I'm not originally from South Africa. We live in South Africa, but have been a little bit stranded in Switzerland for the last 6 months because of COVID. So we finally get to go to our home, our temporary home.
Oh, cool. Wow. And speaking about coolness, there's Renee Stegmann with Relocation Africa. She and I were just on a program earlier this week. And so Renee, what time is it there?
It is 6:05. It's 6 p.m. in the evening.
Okay, great. So I want to get back to you in just a moment. Let's go to Yvonne Quahe in DC with World Bank Family Network. Why don't you please just reintroduce yourself briefly about what the Family Network is all about, and specifically your position. And then later we'll get into some details about helping employees and their families during these crazy times. So Yvonne, what is your job?
What's my job? That's a good question. Anything and everything. No. Well, the World Bank Family Network, let's talk about that first. We are actually the unit that supports the spouses and families of World Bank staff as they travel around the world. We are actually a volunteer-based organization with just one layer of staff that, lead the programs, the subject matter expertise, the ones who keep the show going. The rest of our programs are highly dependent on our members. And they are volunteers, and they actually contribute. So much of our success is because of them. They contribute the equivalent of 17 full-time staff to support our families abroad. And we have chapters in every location. Well, we are in 140 locations. So we have now chapter leaders, they're called champions, to welcome our staff and families in 70 locations. So we need to go out and we need to see who is willing to volunteer. But we ask them to volunteer on a very minimal, like help them by email or talk to them. You choose before they move, and then welcome them then they move, when they move. So we trend to ask them, because they're volunteers, to do the minimum so that we can have a consistency across the board. Of course, we employ highly qualified professionals who are all part of dual career relationships. So, of course, when they come to Washington, D.C. particularly, although we have 140 offices around the world, the bulk of our staff are still based in Washington, D.C. And fortunately, we can work here. And so I handle the spouse partner support career side. And I design and run the Career Lab, which is our program to support accompanying spouses. So generally, I do those are the two things that are my main things: supporting the worldwide program and doing the Career Lab.
So thank you very much for that. I want to introduce Andrew Elliman, who's here with us from UK, London. Welcome. You got out of the river.
Hi, Andrew.
How's the swimming going?
Hi, Ed.
Hi there.
Hi, Yvonne. The swimming's going well. I'm now swimming in the pool at the moment. So I don't know if you can hear me properly. My internet's not that good today for some reason. But
yeah, you're breaking up.
It's going well. I big swim, so I'm doing the length of the channel in a swimming pool in my village where I live.
Yeah. So a couple of people are sending me messages here saying that they're having trouble connecting to the link, but they're going to be trying. So forgive me while I'm trying to communicate with them.
That's fine. I had the same problems.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So Andy Elliman is based in UK. For those of you who don't know him, he's a European head of business for a large group called AGS. So Andy, I want you to meet Renee Stegmann with Relocation Africa. You guys should meet. And Sundae Schneider-Bean. Unusual name. Yes. Okay. And Stephen Howard in my upper left. He's head of Caliente Consulting and best-selling author of a lot of leadership books. So Andy Elliman, for you who don't know yet, climbed Mount Everest and succeeded, and has come back a changed guy. And now he has decided to learn how to swim and swim as a challenge for charity, the English Channel, and was scheduled to do so next month. However, with the COVID and nonsense and all that, it has been postponed a year. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah. Well, good for you. We wish you well. And but you're practicing now in the rivers north of London and in your backyard, all hooked up to some kind of a machine, right?
Yeah, well, not quite a machine. I've got a makeshift swimming pool, and I tie a rope to me and literally swim against the rope. So although I was meant to do the channel this year, obviously I can't because of the situation. So I'm doing it next year. And to make sure the charities don't lose out this year, I'm still swimming in my swimming pool the length of the channel this year. So it's sort of, I'm going to do it twice, if you like. So I've got my whole village involved. Everyone's coming down. It's all social distancing at the same time, but we've got lots of activities happening around the pool as I do the swim. So we've got a radio station, local newspapers are coming down to record it all. We're going to be streaming live as much as we can, and hopefully connecting in with your show, actually. So we're trying to really expand as much as we can on the whole progress.
Okay. So we're waiting for Mark to join us. It's too bad he's having some trouble. We have people in the background who have muted themselves and don't want to be on video. I just want to say to you all, welcome. And Mel, if you want to come on and say hello. And Sandra, we certainly welcome you. Hi, Jana. This is Jana Masick from Florida. Say hello, please.
Hello, good to see y'all.
Yeah, this is great. And so this is Yvonne Quahe with the World Bank Family Network and Jana Masick. So Yvonne, let's go a little bit deeper about taking care, the duty to care, and the benevolent attitude is a wonderful thing, and unifying and not divisive, of course. I'm not getting political, I'm just talking about humanity. And so the bank and you personally are taking care of the employees and family. Give us one or two quick examples of things that you're doing or have done recently.
Oh, what we did as soon as we knew that we were going on lockdown, we knew that people were in a state of shock. So we immediately went online first for our team, because we are the ones who have to deliver the work. So we started to have team hangouts where people just basically was to be together and to just sort of process what was going on for each of us. And then we did also virtual hangouts for our families. And we had them twice a week. So initially the program was very much COVID centered, about what's new and good, what routines are you establishing. We had somebody, a special expert, Ruth Van Rieken, talk about lost dreams, all these sort of psychological first aid support. And then now we've moved on to information to sort of divert a little bit from, there's so much you can do about COVID, right? You don't want to focus too much on the stress. It's a balance of letting people say what they feel supported, and then also refocus onto something more positive. So now we have something called Thursday Travels, where we showcase our chapters. So people talk about each, what it's like to live, and we call it the inside track, and about living in the different locations where we have offices. And actually, it has turned out to be very, very successful, because it aligns with the telemanagement strategy, because we are trying to send more people out when they can fly, that is. And so showcasing what life is like with a country, in the country offices, as we call them, with our members, people really identify oh, you're just like us. And so this is what life is like for you. So they're meeting people, and it's become like an informal forum. If I'm moving, I attend one of these hangouts, and I ask my questions, like what can teenagers wear to a mall in Pakistan, this kind of thing. So we basically try to give them support. And now, of course, we're hearing a lot from our members about the overwhelm with the onset of the school year. So I think what was initially what we all thought, and Stephen will know much more than I about the brain, is that we thought it was linear. You're going to go through the shock period, then you experience the pain, and then there will be rehabilitation, and guess what? It'll all be fine. We have a distinct memory of our team meeting where we all sort of, we'll be here. And, one of my colleagues said, on June the 10th, I will be back in Brazil. Well, today is August the 19th, and nobody's gone anywhere. And so we all sort of thought it was going to be over. But now that pain, the shock pain rehabilitation, what we thought is linear, is now cyclical. And therefore, I think it's causing a lot of people a lot of stress and anxiety.
So tell me about, as much as you can, how are managers in the various bank companies and departments communicating to you about stresses or reality that they see with their employees as a result of the remote connections?
I mean, I would say it's universal. I don't think it's unique to the bank. I think for dual career couples, I think it boils down to how do I work and support my children at school. I think it's important not to call it homeschooling, because homeschooling is actually a specific curriculum. I think this is where we get very muddled with our terms. Homeschooling is a specific curriculum. I think what we're doing is emergency schooling. And so trying to straddle that, I need to work, I need to deliver, and then I also need to support my kids. So I think that also varies depending on how old your children are. So talking about that, we had an activity called Fun on Screen for the summer as well. So when we talk about families, I didn't participate in that. Kids are not my strength. We had volunteers do an amazing Fun on Screen program for basically 3-year-olds to 14-year-olds. So we have a pretty amazing crowd, actually.
Yeah. So, Andy, I want to thank you for the intro to Yvonne. It's been great. So, Renee, how does this relate to what you're hearing about your corporate clients and some of the issues they're having? It's pretty universal, isn't it? Same kinds of things.
Absolutely. Just hearing all the stories, I guess like Sundae is experiencing being stuck in a location which is not your home, or perhaps, trying to get out, the anxiety around, trying to get out with all these unknowns and sort of feeling desperate. So a lot of them are feeling very anxious consistently. There's sort of no holiday or no breakaway because there's just so many unknowns. So yeah, absolutely. It's an incredibly tough time. We try and support them as much as we can. Obviously, we're just an ancillary to be able to support them. And they rely very heavily on information and communication. So we just try and feed as much of that as we can to, allay their fears or give them confidence to be able to be making the right decisions. But it is very tough for families. And there's lots of families who are also separated. So you may have a father who's abroad and the rest of the family, in their sort of host location. And that makes things very challenging, again, because they're trying to keep things consistent, and the family together who's quite frankly just broken up, so they're shattered for the time being and with no understanding of exactly when they will get back together. So it's very frustrating for a lot of them. But as I say, all we can offer is support.
Yeah.
And communication.
So I want to reintroduce Jana Masick, who's from Jacksonville, Florida, and has extensive experience in corporate management of expats and mobility for a large energy company. Jana, that certainly rings bells with what you're going through personally, I think, as well as some of the people you've been helping the past 6 months.
Definitely, Ed. I agree with everything that the amazing panel you put together shared so far. It is a time for all of us to reassess, and it's definitely not a linear experience. We almost have to reinvent ourselves, every week, and reset our own expectations. The challenges, I feel, are when we set our expectations at a certain level, and then the circumstances or people may not be able to align with those expectations. That's, I feel, is really triggering. And from the personal experience with children, there's a lot of rethinking, reorganization, and how do you go about this? And many people I spoke with and colleagues trying to figure out what the school year is going to look like. So I agree that it's definitely a time for all of us to be creative and innovative in our own personal universe, so to speak.
So Jana has great experience in corporate management, and she's also a talk show host. Does a weekly broadcast. I was fortunate to be one of her guests. And since then, I've latched on to Jana to come back here as fast as possible many times. So some of the things you talk about are personal growth and development and dealing with disappointment and dealing with rejection and all kinds of crap. So unfortunately, you're in transition at the moment, aren't you?
I say it's not unfortunately. I believe all transitions we're going through are great lessons that are uniquely presented in front of us. So the company I've been with for about over 4 years, great company that builds power plants, has restructured and again adapted to what the new business looked like. They had to basically eliminate 70 positions across the world. And because we've seen a slowdown with the US immigration and a slowdown with the mobility, which was the majority of my role within the company, my role also was eliminated. Now, how do you look at it, right? And that's exactly what I share. Do you look at it as doom and gloom? And now, I'm all done. What am I doing next? Or do you take it as an opportunity to say, wow, now I'm free. What can I create? How can I serve? How can I still add value to people around me? And I see it as a great opportunity, to really become more creative and think outside of the box business-wise as well.
Thank you. We're going to circle around, of course. So I want to invite Sandra, who's on the show with us in the background. She is based in the Saudi Arabia. Sandra, you're welcome to join us. So unmute and turn on your camera. And please.
Hi, Ed. Good evening, everybody. Well, I would love to show my beautiful face, but it's already almost 8 o'clock here, so I'm in pajama. But if nobody minds watching me in my pajamas and in my worst, I'll gladly turn on that camera, so be ready. Hello, everybody.
Welcome.
Fantastic, Sandra.
Thank you very much.
So, Sandra.
Thank you. How's everybody?
Yeah, just great. Sandra and I have been in communication, and this is the first, actually not the first time. You were on an earlier show in the background. So I want you to meet Mark Bicocchi, everybody. Mark, thank you for making that link work. And,
yeah, hey, Ed, and hey, everybody. I'm so sorry. I've been having some issues with Zoom lately, but I finally got it working. So it's good to see everybody. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, okay. So Mark is senior manager with Hilton Worldwide and responsibility for mobility. So obviously a lot of changes and stress factors. Mark has spoken at our live meetings and has been on our radio show and again on TV. So really honored to have you back. Mark, I want to introduce Sundae Schneider-Bean, who's been on assignment in Switzerland, was stuck in Switzerland. Can you imagine? And
not a bad place to be stuck, right?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, right. And then Stephen Howard is from Palm Springs, California. He's an author of best-selling books on leadership. And one of them is, if I get this right, Stephen, Better Decisions, Better Outcomes. And then another one is about CEOs with frazzled brains making lousy decisions. So Mark is very much involved in people issues and dealing with people making lousy decisions. And then he has to deal with it and put the Band-Aids back on, right, Mark?
Yeah, no, sure. Yeah, it's been a tough time, particularly in our industry, with Hilton and hospitality. We've undergone just obviously with the coronavirus, undergone a lot of impact to our brands and our business, and in many cases looking at probably a global occupancy rate pre-COVID of 70 to 75%, roughly, going down to even at times 10% globally. Shut down of a lot of our hotels, a lot of layoffs. We just had 2,100 corporate layoffs in our business, and a lot of furloughs as well. So it's been really tough, but I've been just trying to keep the boat afloat from a mobility perspective, and we're starting to see some relocations happen again. But yeah, it's interesting. Even some of the high ups that we are moving, even in a situation like we have now with COVID, you wouldn't believe some of the requests for exceptions you still get, even though money is so tight right now with our company, and they still have the nerve to request, certain things. So yeah, just continuing to manage that, deal with that, and do the best we can to keep the program going.
Mark, I want to introduce you to Yvonne Quahe in Washington, D.C. with the World Bank. And her specific area of expertise is with the family network, in other words, employees and their families. And I've asked her earlier before you got on about duty to care, helping the families. So first, before we get deeper, meet Yvonne. Yvonne, meet Mark. You're both in the Washington region, by the way.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, great to meet you. Yeah, we're both local together.
Yeah. So, Mark, what are the higher ups, as well as people who you have communication with, meaning staff and people on assignment who are stuck somewhere? Does that mean they're stuck in one of your hotels somewhere?
Yeah, could be hotel. We obviously service our both our hotel operations side as well as our corporate side, and a lot of our hotel operations moves or assignments are handled locally, specifically by the hotel. Although we get some fair involvement in some of those, but most of our involvement is in our corporate moves and assignments, and yeah, in some cases. We did have folks that were stuck in certain hotels. Our corporate offices, we only have about 6 worldwide. So it was more an issue with being stuck in certain places with hotels. And when we did undergo an exercise a couple of months ago, I worked with our crisis management team to locate some individuals where they were stuck and it was difficult to get out because of the coronavirus situation, and particularly in areas where there was some political unrest, and they needed to get back home. So we did the best we could to partner with our emergency services through ISOS to even help us out with getting some of those folks back home where we could.
Yeah, Sandra Corona, are you stuck in Saudi Arabia?
No, actually. Thank goodness, everything's fine here. But if what you're referring is to if there's no flights, yes, there are no flights. There was a plan of opening Bahrain. Sometime they were saying first July the 20th, then the 27th. And finally, they announced only that they were opening the borders only for business, for importing, exporting, but pretty much it. So there are flights that the embassies are preparing for the expats that have to leave the country, right, that have been let go. So those flights can leave. And for example, in my husband's company, Aramco was pretty amazing to prepare flights for the wives that were stuck prior to the shutdown. They brought them back. And, kind of reuniting families. But so far, yes, the borders for Oman, Dubai, they've opened, but they are doing the quarantine. And nobody is wanting to really leave, right? Because Saudi is not allowing for people to leave. Because otherwise you leave and then what? You can't come back. So it's up to you what you decide to do. So in a way, yes, we're just
Yeah.
traveling mentally.
Okay, so I want to welcome Mel. Mel, hello. Say hello, please. Oh, you're unmute.
Oh,
Hi,
there
Mel.
you go. Hey, Ed, how are you? Glad
All
to
right.
be here.
Been a long time. Okay,
Yes.
so introduce yourself quickly to our group.
Sure. I'm Mel Smith. I'm currently with DeWitt Worldwide and DeWitt Move family of companies. I'm familiar with the World Bank Family Network through my association with Families in Global Transition, FIGT, or sometimes called Fidget by former board member and Andrew Cattell. But I was on the board with FIGT and attended some of the conferences where World Bank Family Network were involved. So also had an opportunity to be a provider, as a contractor provider for relocation to the World Bank Group with my former firm. So I am also an expat, having lived in Germany for several years, returned back to the States almost 2 decades ago, which seems like it was yesterday. Hard to believe. I worked for formerly Interdine, which is now part of the Santa Fe Group. And that's my story, and that's why I'm involved. And it always seems to put on really worthwhile and interesting
You're nice
presentations. So I love to participate.
Mark, let's Mark Bicocchi with Hilton. Let's go a little deep dive into what you see coming up in the fall, the impact of COVID. Is it lessening?
Yeah, I think so. We're starting to see a little bit of signs of recovery in our business. We're seeing less vacancy as we were before. It was pretty bad at one point, like I was saying before, but we're seeing a slow, steady curve in the right direction in terms of business. And so what that means for us is we're still managing our program of expats out there, as well as our domestic relocation program. But we've already started to see a couple of assignments and moves take place, onesie twosies. And we think, once the fall hits, as long as the rise is coming in terms of people wanting to stay and travel in hotels, then we'll continue to see some of the moves rise. But it's going to take a little while. We're setting expectations internally that it could take up to a year, 2 years for that demand to really come back. We know people are going to want to travel on vacation, and that pent-up demand will be there. The thing we're a little worried about, I think, internally with businesses is the business travel aspect, and particularly with Zooms and WebExes and Microsoft Teams and all the different avenues you have available. How long will it take for people to want to get back to a face-to-face? I think everybody wants to, but will companies have that money invested for travel and expense to be able to travel and entertainment, to be able to get out and do those meetings? We're hoping, but it could take a while.
I want to quickly ask Sundae to comment. So Sundae, for those of you who don't know, she's an extensive writer and consultant. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm the podcast host of Expat Happy Hour and the founder of Expat Coach Coalition. By training, I'm a solution-oriented coach and intercultural strategist. So I study how do you cross cultures, how do you deal with change, how do you work through transformation. So I've been abroad myself for 21 years. I have been working with expats for over a decade. I'm also a mother of third culture kids, an accompanying spouse who runs 100% location independent business. So I understand from the inside out what the life is. I kind of feel like I have the behind the curtain view from people who you all talk to, because when they're struggling and they're looking for answers, or they're not able to cope with uncertainty or anxiety, or find purpose and meaning wherever they are, they come to me. So I see the people who are kind of at their limits, where their organization isn't able to meet their needs because it's outside the scope of what they do, or they're being called to make really tough decisions, and they need a sparring partner to help them get clear on that. So I see so much connection with everybody here in terms of the challenges that you're facing. And one of the reasons why I'm on the call today is I feel like we should talk to each other more, because each of us has a piece of the puzzle that's really valuable. And the more that we connect, the more that we can serve our people in the lane that we operate.
Yeah, good. Thank you. So we have some people in the background who are obviously busy doing business. But Valerie and Lynn, I welcome you to join us and contribute to the conversation. Let's go back to Yvonne for a moment. So how many people do you actually network with and communicate with on an average week?
I mean, I tend to be much more in touch with my own team rather than with the members, because my work centers, So probably about 10 to 12.
Yeah, and through them, how many people are we talking about where there's a communication flow? Typically.
That's hard to say. I don't know, so I can't answer you. But just to give you the scope, we have 7,000 members, and we have a what we call a family network account, which the office manages, and the office then triages all the messages to the various heads of program. So what I don't see, if it's not relevant to me, I don't see it in my box. So I can't answer that. But I think, again, like Sundae, we tend to see the pain. We tend to see that, hey, this is not working, I'm struggling, because we do the families. And so we get to see really the nuts and bolts of the moving and what's really working when they move and what's not working when they move. Because the staff sometimes doesn't even know what's going on because they're at the office. And so who's at the front line, the accompanying spouse, whether it's a he or a she, they are the ones who take the heat, so to speak, of, when the electricity doesn't work, when there is no internet, because where our offices are, there's always internet. But when you're at home, you could be there for 3 days without internet. Yeah. So, like you, we see that. So we try to advocate. That's our other role, which I not talked about. We tend to take the patterns and we listen to what our members say. And when it's right, we do advocate with WBG management to say, hey, you don't just move a staff member, you move a family. So this is what's going on for them. And, it's one of those. The problem, I think, with relocation or mobility is that you have really two key stakeholders, but the organizations only talk to one stakeholder, which is the staff member. But the real impact, and often the decisions are made by the other stakeholder, like, I don't want to go. Or you can apply for a job here, but not there, or whatever it is. And you, in one sense, organization has no control over the other person in a way, but I can affect the talent management strategy of your company. I can. If my spouse holds a very critical role and I'm not happy about going or continuing to go, well, whatever my scenario is, it could have an impact on you. You could lose your talent, or you can't get to the talent that you want to where they want to go. And I think that's at the heart of the problem. I don't see that there's an answer to that because you can't employ both of them. So you have to manage that relationship, I think. And that's what we hope to do, or we try to do anyway, for the last 50 years.
Mel, I want to get you back involved in the conversation briefly. I happened to be watching the Democratic convention last night for a while, and on the roll call, the people from Guam came on, and I thought that was terrific. So I say this to you because I'm familiar with DeWitt. They have a Guam operation for many years. So, what do you think about all the cross-cultural stuff in the convention last night?
Well, I really appreciated it, honestly, and I was really happy to see Guam because we do have our office there, and it's been there for, 40, 50 years probably. But I am a cross-cultural individual. I was born in Jamaica, and I was just thinking about that as we were talking, and came to America when there weren't a lot of West Indian Jamaicans that were in the States at the time in the mid 60s, with a family that there was actually family separation in my family, where my parents were in the States for a year without us, and we were all infants, my siblings at the time. And I come from a very diverse background as a Jamaican, where I have ethnic Chinese, ethnic Southwest Indian, Asian family, family of European descent, obviously African descent as well. So coming to America was a bit of a cultural shock in a way, because people's families look the same to me. And then also there was an aspect of, we identified strongly with a lot of Latino and South Americans because we ate similar types of foods. So I was always growing up with that type of diversity. So I really appreciate seeing that. I'm a father of a TCK as well, and a double immigrant. So all of those things that I see that kind of lend to the melting pot that is America, and appreciating diversity has always been an aspect of my life and what I appreciate in culture. Even within a culture that appears to be superficially homogeneous, there's so much diversity within it. I learned that living in Germany, and I learned that having married a woman that was from the Czech Republic but considered herself Bohemian, and was raised in Germany, so she considers herself a Bavarian as well. And learning the difference between being a Franken within Bayern or Schwäbisch within Southwest Germany. So all that I thought was fantastic.
Thank you very much. So I think we all got a lesson. Sorry, I'm getting all these messages here. Last night, I think we all got a lesson in global mindset with when they did that roll call vote. I thought that was very creative. Stephen Howard, your perspective in dealing with different cultures, but mainly at the C-suite level, correct?
Mostly, although I lived in Singapore for 21 years, and then I lived in Australia for 12 years. So I've spent over half my life as an expatriate and living outside the United States. And I can echo what Melvin just said about America. Singapore is the same thing. A lot of diversity in Singapore. It seems to be a homogeneous culture, but it's not. It has various permutations of it, various ethnic backgrounds and language backgrounds that over the years.
Yes, Yvonne.
Oh, I was just laughing about Singapore. That's all. I mean, I guess. Although I just met Stephen today, we could carry on about Singapore for a long time.
Absolutely. But, when I moved to Singapore, I mean, they were just starting, or actually a couple of years after I moved, they started their Speak Mandarin campaign. So you went from a country where the biggest television shows were Cantonese soap operas from out of Hong Kong. And then suddenly they were all dubbed over and speaking Mandarin. And it was just interesting to watch how that culture changed over the years.
So was that movie Crazy Rich Asians popular?
Oh, Ed, don't stop me on that. I have maybe it's a diversion, but anyway, I have very strong views about that. I think we did ourselves a disservice, because if you've actually read the trilogy, it is brilliant. And I think, we would depict it as this crazy, literally crazy rich Asian. The mental impression everyone has is of this Marina Bay Sands and everybody doing that dancing on the top of the building. And Stephen, I'm sure, can support me that is very different from the average Singaporean,
Oh, extremely.
And I think that culture is so much more interesting to have been doing it. But then, of course, it's my hobby horse, because I actually wrote a book called We Remember Cameos of Pioneer Life many, many years ago, from the Asian standpoint, about the colonial life in the colonial times from an Asian standpoint. It was the first one. So I won't take out airtime on that, but...
Why not? Speak up.
That sets me off. So.
But you raise a good point, Ed, in terms of cross-cultural communications. I think particularly in this environment, and I think people like Mark and Sundae are going through the same thing. You have to over-communicate in today's world with your employees, and understand that they're going to have a different sense based on their cultural background, depending on what's happening in their particular location. I talk to people around the world, and some people are in very tight lockdown situations and under a tremendous amount of stress and anxiety, and others are sort of, it's hit or miss. Even when one country, I talked with people in Australia last week. The people in Victoria and Melbourne are totally locked down and have gone into their third lockdown, and they're under tremendous stress. And I talked to somebody in Sydney the next day, and they're like, it's okay. Some people wear masks, some people don't. We're kind of going out to dinner tomorrow night. And that's the same country, but two different cities. And just have to understand what's happening in the local situation.
So Renee, Stegmann in CapeTown, is it lockdown?
We have just been lifted up to level 2, which is super exciting. We can actually go and buy alcohol and cigarettes. Not that I smoke, but I smoke, but I actually felt like buying cigarettes today just because I can. I mean, it's just been crazy. Anyway, but we're very relieved. I was expecting the bottle stores to have queues, but actually everyone was pretty tame about it. So I think a sense of normality, I guess, by hitting level 2, makes us all feel a little bit more comfortable that we haven't gone ever sort of in reverse. We've just constantly gone from level 5, 4, 3, 2. So it's hopeful. It's hopeful in this country, but our economy is suffering, and we were already suffering before lockdown. And so we've got a very steep mountain to climb to get us out of here. But it's been amazing to see the involvement of the business and communities trying to assist, business get back on track. So, for us, our business, Relocation Africa, there's no inbounds at the moment. But we are confident that, that will start opening up soon. We've heard mumblings end of October, but we kind of sitting, very close to the radios to get the news of that. But we're surviving and coping and feeling hopeful at the moment.
So, Jana, you have a family at home, and are you homeschooling or whatever it's called?
Whatever it's called, I love that. I think it's whatever it's called for all of us nowadays. But I have half and half. My oldest son is in the middle school, and I think it's best for him to go back. However, his time is he's going to be on virtual school for 2 days, and then on physically in school for 3 days. And then my youngsters that are in elementary school, I decided to go ahead and just do a curriculum with them, and you can hear their noises in the background. So it's an interesting road to take on this year for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much. Sandra.
Can I say something, Ed?
Yeah.
In terms of culture, back to the public health response and how well COVID has been managed varies from country to country. I mean, if you look at the Asian cultures that are much more hierarchical and much more group-centered and compliant, I mean, in Thailand, there is virtually no more COVID. The only thing, unfortunately, Mark, is that tourism is suffering because the airports are still closed. My brother lives in Thailand, and he's on a trip now, and he keeps sending messages saying this is the only time you can stay in 5-star hotels for $100. So everybody should be going on a road trip because the occupancy rate, as you say, is so low. But that said, it is completely safe. Everybody has a mask. If you're told, can you go and sit there? People go and sit there. You can't enter without sanitizing your hands, putting your mask on. Everybody does it. Now with Singapore, I mean, they can even electronically tag you. And nobody says anything. And if you break the quarantine, you either fine or you can have your work permit revoked. So, and in some cultures that would be considered extremely draconian. But guess what? The economy is okay. So this has actually brought up a very fascinating question about health, economy, culture. And I think it goes back to organizations as well, if we can pull it back to our conversation. What do leaders do? I think how successful you are as a leader in getting through your measures depends on your organizational culture as well. You know, it's almost the same as the culture of the country.
Mark Bicocchi, that's really helpful. Mark Bicocchi, with the COVID impact and running hotels and temporary lodging, clean and safe and trustworthy, that's it. I mean, it sounds like the draconian measures might be necessary for a while to get business travel effective. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a fascinating point, Yvonne. I agree with you. It's almost like you would seem like the sharper elbow that you lay down on it, the more success you have in this sort of pandemic type world, even though one could think that it might be too intrusive or what have you, but perhaps necessary. One of the big initiatives we have now with the company is we call it our Clean Initiative, and I've stayed in a few properties myself since COVID, and it's been fantastic, the protocols that they're taking, and there's obviously everyone behind the desks, the front desks are wearing masks. There's big plastic screens up in front. They don't even, in many cases, you don't even need to show your credit card when you're checking in. It's just a social distancing communication with the back front desk, and then you go on to your room. Most of the people, everybody's, if the occupancy is low, they're going to put everybody on the first floor so that you don't have to get into an elevator. There's markings all over the lobbies and on each floor, those little circle stickers on the floor that say stay 6 feet apart. And I think every 6 feet, there's a different sticker in the lobby as you walk toward the elevator or to your room. And then when you go into your rooms, the doors actually have a sticker between the door and the little entryway there to remind you as you open the door, you take off the sticker just to remind you about the cleanliness and what you need to do while you're there. There's also, in many cases, hand sanitizer there right when you walk in, antiseptic, and so on and so forth. And the housekeepers are doing the same each day. So there's a lot of measures they're putting in place at all the properties and making it mandatory for those owners, whether they're a franchise property or not, to adhere to that so that globally we can be consistent in taking safety precaution.
Mark, as you consider bringing back, when you get the okay, when you're considering bringing back staff or hiring new people or going to robots or what's your employment plan? Are you going to go more virtual? I mean, automatic, VR, AR, or are you going to have actual people?
Well, I think a great question. On the corporate side, in fact, I just took a survey this morning because I'm at our headquarters in McLean, Virginia, and for our corporate staff, I think they're trying to look at, it's going to be probably virtual for the time being and through the end of the year, and then they may open up the building maybe beginning of next year, and then when they do, it could be something where it's 1 to 3 days a week in the office, the rest virtual, so on and so forth. The bigger question is on the hotel side. I think some of our brands out there are looking at ways to make the experience much simpler. They were already looking at these ways prior to COVID, where some of our newer brands that were on the more focused service side, meaning the lower end brands, wouldn't even have a kiosk when you walk in. Essentially, when you book your room, you automatically, you can even check in like through your phone, and then your phone can behave as a key, and then you can go in. So they're looking at different ways like that. But I think, in general, it's gonna move more in that sort of direction. However, there's still a big piece of the clientele out there that likes that face-to-face contact. So there's going to be a balance, I think, depending on that.
Yeah, good. So, Yvonne, what do you think about staffing up? Are you going to add more people once this thing settles down?
Well, I don't know what the bank side is doing. We at the Family Network will definitely not be staffing up at all.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
May I ask a question? What I'm curious about is I definitely want to talk to Andrew, ask Andrew to respond to this. But since everybody's involved in somehow in global mobility, and what Yvonne mentioned about tying it with what Yvonne mentioned about the cultural differences being directly having a direct impact on the cases of COVID. I think Mark just mentioned he's in McLean. I live in Reston, but we're headquartered out in San Diego. And, Virginia had a very, I had the longest, I think, stay-at-home order back in March when everybody in every state started coming out with their own stay-at-home orders. And if you look across our Commonwealth, you'll see in certain areas, like Fairfax County is a little bit higher, but Loudoun County, which neighbors Fairfax County, is rather low in terms of increases or incidences in Richmond County, where the capital is. Now, the governor of the Commonwealth is a medical doctor, so maybe that impacted that. The point of the question now is how, for you, Andrew, or anybody involved in relocation, we have people going in and out of homes every day as a mover, and families are potentially exposed to new people every day. These movers may be in a new household every other week, every other day. What precautions are you taking as movers? And then as from the relocation professionals, and then those folks who are at home who are dealing with this, how receptive are you to this? Andrew, or do you guys have protocol that you're using at your company? You find that same protocol being practiced across, because AGS is a large network across the organization. And so what's happening in your specific area, and how do you guys feel about people coming into your homes? What are you requiring for those service providers to do to ensure your safety?
Andrew he sent me a message. He said his connection is so weak, and so he's not here to answer that question, Melvin.
I can try.
Okay, so Renee, meet Mel.
Hi, Mel. So we work partially as a move manager, and we assist families who are going to embark on obviously a full relocation. And a lot of the movers that we deal with offer the assignee an option for a virtual survey. And these virtual surveys are basically done so they get one estimate from what is being moved. And then that survey, so we try and act as an impartial getting that virtual survey, and then we send that out to 3 or 4 movers to get an estimate on the cubic meters or foot or whatever the measurement is. So that is one way where we've offered assignees to reduce the face-to-face contact. In our industry, and I can just talk because I'm part of a bigger network which covers TIRA, which is a whole lot of owner-managed relocation companies across the world. And a lot of them have developed like a virtual home search. So, for example, the assignee may be in the country or in the host country, in their home country on their way to the host country, and they can do things like walk through a property. So they could do sort of a house search, but they would basically going through a FaceTime type opportunity and walking through a property. So there's less exposure to the to lots of people. We are actually very excitedly launching at the end of September. It's called a virtual orientation tour. It's we're starting in city CapeTown, and we'll go city by city across the African continent. And that is so when a company is sending an assignee to a new location, they'll actually be able to get it's a video essentially with telephonic support. and orientate themselves around that city. We're also doing a 360 drive through the city, so they really get a feeling and can look around as if they were physically present in that city. Now, what that does for an assignee, obviously the touch point is very low. Also, sustainability has become a big buzzword, and sustainability and costs. So the sort of preventing the expat from flying in and out of the city, this orientation tour can confirm whether they're going to sign their contract, for example, to then go and take up the assignment. That is also going to have further cost savings for the big corporates, because they will not perhaps even need to go into temporary accommodation and go straight into their long-term accommodation. So there are ways that our industry or the relocation service businesses are looking at how to do this with less touch points, reduce costs. A lot of the corporates ask for what they refer to us as DSPs to reduce our cost. And we are trying to get them to understand, because you spoke earlier, Ed, of duty of care, that if you imagine that the relocation companies are the one who are holding the baby or the assignee, so if you cut off one of our arms to hold the assignee, we're going to drop it. And so it's very important that those costs, and they only make up, I did a study, my MBA thesis on costs in Africa, it's only 2% of the entire expat cost is the DSP cost. But where they can really save money is by looking at these virtual opportunities with their DSP partners in certain locations. So there is a lot being done in both the moving sector and the relocation sector.
Yeah. Thank you, Jenna. Mark Bicocchi, would you like to comment on what Renee was just chatting about?
Yeah, we utilize an RMC, obviously, to do our and it's funny because I think a lot of times some of our assignees out there and like they think the RMC is actually doing the shipments and the packing and they don't realize that they're just the company that's coordinating everything and has their own network. And sometimes they even think the global mobility person at corporate within their company is the one who's going to move them. They don't realize how many people it takes. And that's mainly for a lot of first-time movers. But yeah, we utilize DSP services a lot through our RMC and their network of providers that they have. And, I think depending on where we are having or hosting an assignment, in many cases, a lot of that work is done for our company. Many times that's done by a local provider, or we get our regional comp and ben folks that tell us, you know what, that's nice that you have an RMC that has a DSP out there that does that work, but we've been very comfortable for years and years. I mean, we're a 100-year-old company, so we've been comfortable for years and years using our local John Doe that does that tour orientation or homeschool search or housing search or what have you. And so we try to be pretty flexible on allowing that to happen and not going through us, all the time. Another thing I'll just mention with Mel's question, which is a good one. I actually just moved myself locally and I live in Loudoun County, by the way. So I noticed you mentioned you're in Reston. I used to live in Reston, but I moved locally just a couple of weeks ago, just 2 miles away to a new home with my family. And I kind of was wondering the same thing throughout all of that. Like when the movers come in, like, how's it going to be? Are we all going to be in masks? Do we social distance? And how's this all going to work? And it's funny, you're in it's like reloing. We tried to do our best in social distancing, but it was not easy. I mean, it was, at certain points in time when you got boxes and this, that, and the other, I'll tell you, there were a few times where I just kind of was just not thinking about it or just trying to, you're so stressed with helping out the movers and packing and whatever that you do your best. They were very professional and they were very good about wearing masks and so forth. But I think it's difficult. It's hard to just, do it all. So, but anyway.
Yeah, that's cool. Sundae, your comment that you sent out having to do with resilience. Do you want to comment on resilience?
Well, I'm thinking of the big picture, and I love this idea of what Renee has about this digital solution. And that is such an innovative idea. And if the people that are being sent have not yet developed their skills to deal with high levels of ambiguity or uncertainty, they might completely reject that. They might be holding on to, no, I need to be there. Right. And if we, this is what I mean about sharing ideas, you could create a really highly developed plan that meets the needs for COVID, for example. But if the individuals are not prepared or don't have the skills practiced and developed over time to cope with that change, or they haven't practiced that level of resilience and that will not be accepted. Like what Yvonne was saying before, I coach CEOs, and I know when I coach the accompanying partner, in fact, I've coached both in a couple at the same time, there is so much influence going on that it's a shame if one individual's competencies or resilience isn't up there cross-culturally or resilience-wise, they're going to reject really good solutions. And that's because we're still dealing with humans. Like, logic is one thing, right? We are emotional creatures, and we're psychological, not logical, right? And I feel like that's this human side of the global mobility piece that is not always accepted or funded corporate-wise. Individually, people who are in pain will find a way to get their needs met. But from an institutional practice, I think that sometimes gets lost.
Sandra, your perspective is needed here. Are people human in Saudi Arabia?
Can you repeat the question? Are people human?
Well, I was making a joke because I don't know hardly anything about Saudi Arabia, but you've been there a while. So is it the same kinds of situations, or is it just some things are not done?
Actually, I was speaking with my husband about something that just hit me. One of the things that in Saudi Arabia is actually a quite constant is the MERS or SARS, the other SARS, that is transmitted through the camels. So they are a little bit more aware of how to deal with those kind of with the virus. And it's usually a very contained virus because it only happens when you go and, you have those, you see in the pictures that people are on the camels and everything else. So when they catch that MERS, sometimes we get emails that there's an outbreak of MERS. All they do is just, contain people, tell them to stay in their houses. A doctor goes to their house, treats them. They're actually, I would say, very proactive. When it started, they immediately hired Chinese scientists that came from Wuhan, actually. And because we have to remember, right, in Wuhan, it started, I think, in October. So they brought them in February. And everything that they've been doing has been based on those scientists, every decision that they've made. And I have to say that they've done pretty good. Where I live, we live in a compound. And so far, thank goodness, nobody has been infected. We haven't heard of anybody having any issues. We're actually having a good community get-togethers and everything else, because a lot of the husbands stay here at home. They're working from home. The children are not going to school. It has been announced that they're going to restart classes, but they're not going to be in the classroom. They're going to be online. And I would say overall, they've done a pretty good job, because when you go to the stores, they have the sanitizers for the carts. So they have a little nice box where they pass the carts. They have a person taking your temperature. They have the gloves that you can put on. They have the sanitizers. Everything they've been very cautious. The only thing that has been the issue was that we just had Ramadan and Eid. And there were a lot of outbreaks because, it's their thing. That's what they do. They get together, they celebrate Ramadan. And unfortunately, there was some outbreaks, but again, they contained it. So it was pretty good. I'd say that they've done a very, very good job here in Saudi Arabia.
So, Stephen Howard, author, Better Decisions, Better Outcomes. It sounds like there are people who are following that advice.
And they are, I think so. I like what Sundae said about the resiliency, because what you have to understand, and I think this is where the corporations have to understand, that when people are stressed, our brain automatically reacts and it goes into what we call binary decision making. Yes or no, one or two, either or. And that's why someone who's stressed, Sundae's absolutely correct, they may not be receptive to these new ideas because, again, the brain's not open. That's why, again, as I preach in the book, you've got to get yourself under emotional control. And it takes about 8 seconds. Once you make a rational decision to get the rational part of your brain to take over, it takes about 8 seconds or counting to 10 before you get in to prevent that emotional hijacking. And that's what people need to do. Again, pause and reflect, and then be receptive and resilient to these other ideas. And I think organizations, leaders need to understand that. If leaders expect people to come back in the workplace and just go back to the old way, people are going to be bringing so much baggage with them, so much emotional baggage, stress baggage, anxiety baggage when they return to the workplace. Leaders, if they don't know how to cope with that, we're going to see increased workplace violence and increased emotional outbursts and all kinds of issues that we may not be prepared for.
Well, I'm speechless. So Yvonne,
could I say, I was going to go back to what Stephen is saying, because I think that brain stuff, I'm a trained brain-based coach, so he's preaching to the choir here, because he's absolutely 1000% right. Because when our cognitive capacity is impaired, the moment we are stressed, the moment our brain feels threatened, when we are anxious or afraid. So going back, sometimes one wonders, even the quality of decisions taken in COVID, like how good are they at the level of the leaders? Because if you want, everyone's got a brain. Isn't it as if some of us have brains and some of us don't have brains?
Sometimes
right? So
everybody
has a brain. So it's a great leveler, which has, by physiologically, and correct me, Stephen, with the same equal capacity to be triggered. The unequalizer is how I manage my triggers. So if we both face the same triggers, I regulate, you don't. That's how I get ahead. I don't get ahead because I can't be triggered and you can. I get ahead because I can manage the triggers. So we go back to the decision making. How do leaders make the decisions that they make in this COVID time, which I think is very interesting? Are they making it out of that place, as Stephen's book title is, out of stress and anxiety? And then, to connect with Renee, then when I see the virtual thing, what am I triggered? If I'm stressed and I'm anxious, then again, my decision, does the virtual tour give me certainty, or does it even trigger more uncertainty? And that you don't know.
No,
I could feel a lot better going like, oh, wow, that looks really nice. I think I could be happy there. Or I could go, oh my God, if I have to live there, and you don't know that.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Stephen, may I interrupt for a second before you go forward? Will you please tell me the title of that book that you've written? So, and
I'll do better than that, Melvin. It's called Better Decisions, Better Thinking, Better Outcomes. But Yvonne, I love your analogy, because I could say the same thing. Almost all of us have cars, but some of us are better drivers than others.
Okay.
And can I just say, I think this is an opportunity because my philosophy is COVID is a chance for us to make this the best, worst thing that ever happened.
Right.
And if we can really get clear on how we're making decisions, managing our triggers, how we're connecting with our community in times of crisis, if we can stay focused on that goal, we have the potential to change the trajectory of how we manage in our businesses and in our organizations. If we can see this as an opportunity now, rather than surrender completely. There is surrender, but there's also agency. And I think that would be a message I would send back to organizations.
Can I make a comment, please? Because I'm really enjoying everything you're saying from Sundae to Steve and to Yvonne. My background is actually from School of Education, where I was studying media, cultural communication, and from an anthropological standpoint. And to go back to the one of the reasons I jumped on this call was what I learned from being around the therapists, the coaches, the trainers in my interaction with FIGT. I thought was the best conferences I've ever attended. Because I didn't have the vocabulary to define what I was experiencing from a cross-cultural person or having a TCK. And then that informed it from the back end, informed all of the things that had happened in my life, right? So when I'm hearing you now speak about how the brain is supposed to work and how decisions are supposed to be made and then success, I'm trying to figure out how to take those same messages that you're giving me and inform my group, because not working in an academic environment, I'm working amongst peers despite my academic background, which is still 30 years in the past from what I studied. I find that people are not open to hearing some of these, to most of these ideas. And how am I going to inform people who are the ones that are responsible for servicing or providing a service, a need to leaders and their families and their support network for the most daunting task in the work environment, an international assignment or an overseas assignment or a cross-cultural assignment? What strategies do you think that I can use to help inform? Great. Thank you, Stephen. But what strategies do you think you could just, maybe just tips you can give to kind of help inform me, to inform our staff to create greater success when we're providing assistance to you guys? Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a combination of cross-cultural communication. I think it's a combination of sensitivity. I mean, I remember when I became an expat in 1980. I mean, I'm so jealous of what you guys have today. In 1980, I was given an airline ticket on Pan American Airways to Singapore. And when I landed, my secretary said, okay, here's the person to help you find a housing accommodation. Here's another person who can help you find a car. And, there was no support system back then. So I think it's all about setting people up for success and understanding everyone's going to be different to begin with, but particularly new people. So set them up for success, what the social cultures are. I made a lot of faux pas that no one told me about. I had to learn the hard way, but understand cross-cultural communication, understand rules and laws of the country they're going to. It's just orientation, and communication is what I would suggest, Melvin.
But Mel, with the background in education, I'm wondering, with adult learning theory, what can you do that from how adults learn to help them find their own answer?
That's where coaching comes in.
Yeah, I mean, that's
seriously. Yeah,
that seems to work.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's very hard to do that. I mean, in transportation, where it's I'll be upfront, at least in the States, it's chauvinistic, it's prejudicial. There's a lot of that good old guy network, and it's been overwhelmingly male. Mm-hmm. And also very fragmented because it's been most of the businesses are franchises, they're family-owned businesses. There's not a lot of leadership that are coming from outside the family. And honestly, my generation is probably the first generation of leaders or managers that all have college degrees or have worked in different areas. It's going to bring best practices into this environment. But Sundae, to your point, I have found that to be true. It's like if you lead people to make the decision themselves, that they're going to be more open to you than offering some suggestions as opposed to instructing or telling, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
Melvin, can I ask you? Oh, I didn't catch at the beginning. What do you do?
I work in actually the moving and relocation industry. So my expertise is in working with humanitarian organizations, relief and development organizations, and working in austere and post-stabilization environments. So, and the connection came through working with the World Bank, which is the largest USAID funded, United States government funded NGO in the world. So that's how my orientation to relief and development came about. So I'm working with like Save the Children, the Peace Corps, and moving the personal effects and cargo for these organizations into the developing world for the most part. So that's my thing.
Well, maybe for what it's worth, maybe COVID is a great opportunity now to start the conversation for change, because it could impact the business if their behavior doesn't change. So maybe that's the context. I don't know.
You know, I think like you said, and I think what Sundae also said is about looking at this as an opportunity, which is what I saw. The greatest opportunity to become successful. We fortunately have been very successful because we do a lot of work for the Department of State. And the Department of State still happens to be moving a lot of people. Renee, a lot of people were moving a lot of people into Africa. So we're moving a lot of people and equipment for the NGOs still into East Asia. So yes, I agree with you. And working and with this current role with this company, this is their first foray into working with relief and development opportunities, but they're very open. It's really by far the first organization that I've been engaged with that is excited about what they don't know. So the mentality is already there to be very receptive to opportunities and to engage and figure out what they don't know how to do. And they're not embarrassed about it as leadership to say, I don't know anything about this. What more can you teach me?
So we need to bring this to a close, regretfully, but I would like to invite you all back, and we'll do it again in the fall. We're going to be producing about 100 broadcasts between now and the end of March. And sourcing for sponsors and underwriters so we could really do it right. And this show will be an example of how to do it right. And it's because of the interaction that we have experienced here today. And the only thing that was planned was Yvonne and me and Stephen Howard. And then Mark came on, and the Sandrine from Dubai was supposed to be on, but and everybody else is just sort of, well, let's come on here, and then let's have a talk. And so this can happen, and it wouldn't happen without COVID, because as some of you know, March 1, actually Feb 27 was our last live meeting, and it was in Washington on Embassy Row, in the former home of ex-President Woodrow Wilson. So it was a lovely environment and a fitting way to end the live meetings. And so I didn't know anything about video other than watching some. And then, so here we are. We've done 50 broadcasts so far. And I love it. And it's the way forward. And someday we'll do live meetings, I'm sure. I don't know how or where or when, but we'd like to do it around the world. As a matter of fact, very briefly, Feb 13 was our last meeting in LA, and some of you may know it was held in Venice Beach, which is not exactly known as a corporate headquarters area. It's Muscle Beach, everybody. It was, skimpy bathing suits, Speedos and less, but not that I wore one, but I was there. So the iconic Hotel Irwin was the scene of our meeting. And we had people from, well, let me back up. Silicon Beach, as it's called, is Silicon Valley South, because Apple and Facebook and Twitter and everybody else could never recruit people to relo up to the Bay Area. everybody just wanted to stay south. And so they all opened up offices in the south, and right at the area between Santa Monica to LAX. All right. And that area is called Silicon Beach. And so everybody's got an office there. And so that's where we held our meeting, Feb 13. And we had representatives from many of the tech companies in our audience. And we didn't really think about the virus or anything. We were just having discussions. And it was so good. Everybody says, God, how can you get this to travel? You know, it's not being filmed. It wasn't videoed. It was just live conversation, you know, around tables. And so we had a venture capitalist at that meeting as my lunchtime speaker, who helps some of the entertainment industry startups who have offices right there in Muscle Beach, Silicon Beach. So he said, Ed, you have to do this kind of a meeting on Zoom or something else, and don't ever get on a plane again. Just learn how to be a host and practice what you're doing here in person, do it online. And so here we are. And I thank you all for being involved. And I want you to come back and do it again. This program is going to be snipped and tucked, edited a little bit, and then will be on our website in a couple of days, and that will link to our YouTube channel. And it will remain for at least 12 months, free access, free download 24/7. So I thank you all for being on Global TV. Yvonne, thank you for being a leader and welcoming us.
Thank you for having me.
Sandra, be well in Saudi Arabia. And
Thank you.
We're going to talk tomorrow, right? And,
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Mel, it's great to see you again.
Thank you, Ed. Thanks for inviting me.
I know you've been at our meetings here and there over the years. And Stephen Howard, I wish you well in all your new books. Sundae, it's great to see you. I hope you come back on August 28th. And Renee, you're always welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Have a
Stay
good
safe,
day,
all.
everybody.
I'll reach
Thanks,
out to you guys on LinkedIn. Talk
Okay.
Sounds good.
Bye-bye.
Now,
Cheers.
now, if
Bye.
anybody needs an email, just contact me and I'll be
Okay.
glad. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Okay.
Ed. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Cheers.